You know, I feel like I might have forgotten something from these last 10 months. Playing this same game for the last 362 days straight.
Hey! What the hell is going on in here?
Huh. I remember these. Skylanders. Boy, this stuff really takes me back. I mean, these things were everywhere at one point in time. I wonder what happened to them. Toys to life. Depending on who you ask, it can be seen as a type of genre or marketing type of thing. These were games that offered what was a unique experience from a, at the time, pretty unique peripheral. Essentially, the idea was, these were games that hard required these little figures to play. You got the game, and you got the figure. The game comes with this little portal, you put the character on it, and voila! You have the character in the game and it's seamless. It's like infinite toy playability, and domination of a new market. This works through essentially NFC reader technology. For Skylanders, it was RFD, but let's not get into specifics here. Skylanders was the first game franchise to really do this type of thing, where you bought the starter pack that comes with a few starter figures, and then they expect you to go to the store and buy more of them. Hence the term, Toys to Life. And this was the creation of an entirely new market for a time. What at first was a really neat way of emphasizing people to collect these figures, it turned into a massive business model for a bit. For a good amount of the 2010s, you had Disney jump into this and even Lego at one point in time, even Nintendo with Amiibo.
Go get your mom and get one so you can get in.
Alright, I gotta go.
One so you can get in.
For a good while, these things crowded store shelves. These things were everywhere. There were figures that were more rare than others, limited edition figures, blind bags for Disney Infinity specifically. It was a garbage pile of trash. But for a time, because eventually, they all dropped out. Disney Infinity eventually was discontinued. LEGO Dimensions also discontinued. And Nintendo, while they never really stopped with the figures, you don't hear about them as much as you used to. So what happened to Skylanders? This franchise that essentially kicked off this whole trend of making figures that interact with the games we played, it became a whole business of making games that required this level of manufacturing. For me, it's interesting to look back on these, because I have a lot of memories surrounding these games. I played Disney Infinity when it came out, I played Dimensions when it came out, and especially Skylanders since I was there from the beginning. I played the game on release, I remember the commercials.
What should we do today? You go fishing?
The mirror to those clouds looks super evil.
I had tons of these figures when I was a kid. I ate so many of these things, I worshipped them, I killed for them. Trigger Happy was a real G, okay? To my memory, these were really decent kids games. And I mean, Skylanders was a huge franchise at one point in time. I mean, it had it all going on. Not just with the games and manufacturing figures, merchandising, a whole arcade game, a cartoon that existed at one point in time that I have never heard a single good thing about. Not once. I don't dare even touch it with a 9-foot pole. Oh, and don't worry, there is the weird shit. I never forget to mention the weird shit. It's a rabbit gaming tradition. After spending way too much money on a very short nostalgic interest, am I really willing to go back and experience this game just for a YouTube video, and subsequently possibly ruining my overall positive memories I share with this game, realizing it may or may not be as good as I remember? Yes. I guess it wouldn't hurt to revisit it. Ah, the good old Activision logo. You suck now. Back in the far-off year of 2011, a new franchise, Skylanders, Spyro's Adventure. Now, the inclusion of Spyro in this very obvious new franchise was sort of a marketing thing. I say that with a pinch of salt because I don't think anyone was buying this game for the inclusion of Spyro. It stems back to how Skylanders was originally supposed to be a new Spyro game, called Spyro's Kingdom, aiming to be a reinventing of the character with a darker tone and gritty direction, because you know, that worked last time. This direction was scrapped by Toys for Bob in favor of a new idea being Toys to Life. What's interesting is that as development for this new IP went on, it was actually delayed by a year. Skylanders had a full development cycle and had the time to flesh itself out. As Skylanders was this new idea of using real figures to play, they built the whole game around that idea. And if you didn't have the figures, well... The game explains you are a portal master, and this is a portal of power. You, dubbed the Portal Master, must use the portal of power to summon characters into the game, as explained by the Mario floating head Eon.
Greetings, young Portal Master.
Nice computer you got here. Can I have it?
Skylanders are essentially the fighters of evil in this world, Eon the good guy, and then there's Chaos.
Behold, it is I, Chaos!
Chaos is, you know...
Silence, Clubshanks! You're spoiling my evil mood.
So the whole plot of the game is you gotta rebuild the core of life after Chaos destroys it. The core of life being this thing that, quote, keeps the darkness from spreading. The cause of Chaos destroying the core of life is that it sent all the Skylanders to Earth as figures, which you, the Portal Master, must find by spending money at your participating game stores. On release, the standard starter pack cost around $70, which for 2011 was a hard ask. In this pack, you got the Portal and 3 figures. Quaaludes Addict, a dead franchise, and Fish. Each character lies within one of 8 different types. You get water, magic, and tech out of the box. You only need one of each type to experience everything the game has to offer. Within the game, there are these element gates that can only be opened by a certain type. There is also the level expansions, which give you the extra levels to play. As you can see, the game is essentially pay to play. And it's a kids game, which was one of the biggest criticisms of the series from the beginning and until the end of the franchise. On release, buying new figures was $10, or you could get a 3-pack for $25. You got classic characters such as Skeletor, Funky Kong, The Rock, Abomination, The Hammer, and of course, the most broken character in the entire game.
Oh no, bro.
Now, I have to give Skylanders credit here, because when you actually get down to it, having all these figures and placing them on the portal, it's a really neat thing. I might be biased because I grew up playing these games, again, childhood memories, but it's really unique and well done. And every character has unique stats, different moves and attacks that you need to buy and upgrade to unlock. Each character has a memory card within it, so it remembers the progress you have on each figure. This makes it so you can take your figure to any version of the game and maintain your character progress, which was the whole point of the arena mode. To challenge your Skylander against other players' Skylanders. Unless you were against Drobot, where credit is due. It's a very unique experience. Even going back to it today, it's still a really unique thing. The game, however, despite some very broken characters, it's so easy. In all fairness, the game is structured like an early LEGO game, and Skylanders was aimed at kids, so it was a kids game. That was the intended approach. And what they made sure to focus on was the way figures interacted with the game. Each character having their own saved progress created this idea of personalization to each figure. I mean, you can rename every figure, which makes getting used figures quite a unique experience. The game, albeit, is easy, but it has genuine thought put into it. Again, the aspects of how the figures interact with the game, that's quality. There's also the Soul Gems, which unlock the final upgrade to each character, which you're also rewarded with more ads.
Foolish apprentice! You've played right into my hands!
So, you're a kid. You finally get to the final boss, Chaos, and that's it. You beat Chaos, restored balance to the world, and send him to Africa, because everyone knows Africa is literally hell on Earth. The game ends, and you get to listen to Patrick Warburton lose his mind for 20 minutes.
Okay, so what we're doing now is something called breaking the fourth wall. And since I'm acknowledging that fact, does this mean that I am now breaking the fifth wall? I don't know.
Other than like buying more figures or 100%ing the game, there's not much else left to do. Other than the character levels, not much else to do but to end the video and call it a day. Skylanders was a pretty good game, and I'm glad we can leave off on that note. It's fucking Skylanders Giants! Let's go! So, of course, Skylanders was a huge success, and immediately the following year received a sequel game, Skylanders Giants. I mean, it was obvious where the series was going. You had the normal ones, and then the giant ones. They could throw boulders now. Now, Skylanders Giants essentially was like an expansion, a new game that expanded upon the same experience you had before. The game was made with the same engine, graphics are the same, continues with its story mode, but has a lot of quality of life features. You can even use all the same characters from the last game maintaining their progress, and you can still use all those characters to unlock the returning element gates. And for the time, that was really cool. Returning players were rewarded for collecting the past figures. They added Sky Stones. There's more world building and stuff, which, interestingly, the game's plot surrounds an idea introduced at the end of the first game. There was continuity between games. Not like that's an important thing to mention, it just stood out to me, but actual important things to mention, Skylanders Giants introduced gimmicks to the series. This meant that every new entry would feature a new gimmick. Spyro's Adventure, the gimmick was just that they were figures. Giants being a completely new type of character that can bust through walls and throw stuff. And honestly, Eyebrow is pretty cool. I like Eyebrow. He's cool. Skylanders Giants was a pretty good game. I would even say it's the same quality as Spyro's Adventure. Continuing on for the whole series, they would continue with these gimmicks. After what was a really interesting E3 trailer, I really want to emphasize interesting.
Hey you, tweet this. Just saw Swap Force had to swap my pants.
The third Skylanders gimmick was Swap Force. This, in my opinion, was the coolest gimmick in the series. There was so much work that went into this. They made so many figures for this gimmick, and they accounted for every single combination. It's so cool. And look how pretty the game is. This was such a huge step up from what Giants was. And I had the Wii version as a kid. Genuinely definitive. I can't imagine Skylanders without poopy graphics, okay? This is clearly the way the game is meant to be played. This was around the time I, as a kid, started to fall out of the series. It wasn't a factor of me being aware I was playing an inferior version of the game. Maybe it was the charm wearing off at this point, but Skylanders was an annual release. That meant a new game was developed to release yearly. A practice that has shown to exhaust many different franchises. That, and at this point you had Disney Infinity and soon later LEGO Dimensions. The market for Toys to Life was becoming oversaturated. Kid me was growing kind of exhausted with the whole gimmick. I mean, when you had Skylanders coming out yearly, and two competing IPs with honestly way more recognizable characters, this market was becoming so exhausted with the amount of figures that cluttered store shelves. And there are even certain factors about later Skylanders games that make this even worse. Up until the third entry, if you wanted to play with the original first game characters exclusively, you could do that. It was a viable option. You could play as the characters you wanted to play as, the game wouldn't penalize you. I say it like that because that's exactly what the fourth entry did. Trap Team, which is considered by many fans to be the peak of the series, it was also the first game to make the decision to strip away the past game characters' ability to open element gates. You now had to buy each of the new gimmick characters if you wanted to get most out of each game. You were no longer rewarded for collecting past game figures. And if you wanted to play as your favorite character from a past game, well, you can expect past game characters are now substantially weaker than the new characters.
Note to self, after I take over Skylands, come back and destroy this place!
I'd like to see you try, Chaos.
Who said that? Are you fucking—
It was a practice that heavily emphasized people to buy the new figures. If you were a longtime fan, collecting all the figures up until this point basically meant nothing. You had to buy the new figures. Now, in retrospect, I hear a lot of people within the Skylanders fanbase say this game was the peak of the series quality-wise, and to each their own, that is completely fair. The games never really dropped in quality. Toys for Bob and occasionally Vicarious Visions that worked on the game, these were some very nice looking games, and still very high quality kids games. But it was really the scope of the Toys to Life business model and the business practices the series took going forward that really dragged it down. I get why it was done, the game needs to make money, the figures need to be sold, but it's just a really scummy business practice. So after Trap Team came Superchargers. It's a go-kart, I haven't played it, Donkey Kong is in it, and then the final entry in the series was Skylanders Imaginators.
Try to keep up.
Don't get too confident, Spyro.
And you know what? The final series entry being one where you can make your own characters, it just seems so fitting. A high note to go out on. If you were a long-time running fan of the series, you would know that this was the final entry. The sales for this one weren't great as everyone had dropped out of the gimmick at this point. The Switch version didn't even use a portal. It was coming clear that the Toys to Life craze was slowly coming to an end. By this time, Disney Infinity was discontinuing itself, LEGO Dimensions was discontinued, and it was sadly time for Skylanders to take the next step. I mean, you know the writing was on the wall when they made a fucking Chaos figure. In retrospect, I think Skylanders wasn't something that could be around forever. I'd hate to admit it, and this is coming from someone who loves these games, but LEGO already had it figured out. You had a whole game where you fight enemies, solve puzzles, and all these characters to unlock. Skylanders simply put a real price tag on those characters. Yes, those early games were incredibly successful. Pretty good games, I may add, but does this really appeal to everyone? Yes, it has its nostalgic value now, but does the average person looking at Trigger Happy think, yeah, I want to play the game all about him, what's his backstory, how's his sex life? Not me though. I like looking at pictures of Trigger Happy. And I'm sure a lot of kids never got to play the game just out of the fact it seemed too expensive. That beginning price point and added figures was already a high price point to begin with. And I'm sure a lot of kids never got to play the game in general just out of the fact it seemed too expensive. The series was an annual release as well, which, again, that can exhaust a franchise. That and on top of how expensive manufacturing was. In retrospect, these were games made with a heavy amount of quality, but it just didn't make sense in the long term. And you can tell by how expensive the final game figures are. In retrospect, it's unfortunate that going back to these games is pretty difficult. It's just a matter of fact with the way they were made. You're going to be spending a substantial amount of money just to experience these games again. Or you could emulate them. It's why a lot of people really wish for the Skylanders games to be remastered without the use of figures. Which, cool idea, I agree. It would be really cool to see Skylanders come back in that way. But you're basically stripping away the identity of the series when you think about it. I will admit, and some folks will probably be angry at me for saying this, but the Toys to Life craze was a fad. Wow, you have no idea how hard it was for me to admit that. But it was a fad, long enough to create this really cool franchise that sadly couldn't continue once the fad was dying out. Could Skylanders ever come back? I sadly don't think it ever could. Not in the same way. Definitely not in the same way. For multiple reasons being, Toys to Life couldn't necessarily be done like this again. I just don't think many companies are willing to shell out the money for manufacturing such a thing. Skylanders hasn't been relevant since 2017. Ignoring the U2's collab that apparently exists as I write this video. It's not a very positive note to lead this video off, huh? But I think, to all the fans of the series, we can be sad that the series is over, but we can still be happy that it happened at all. And not just that, but I believe Skylanders was a very important stepping stone for the company Toys for Bob. Skylanders got a cameo in Crash 4, it's definitely something that stuck with the company even to this day. Toys for Bob went indie last year, and I'm really happy to see that the developers of Skylanders are still out there making stuff. And thinking about it, Skylanders really did go out on a high note with a final game that didn't sell well, but wasn't considered a commercial failure either. Compare that to a franchise like Saints Row, a series that tried so hard to reinvent itself and became a complete commercial failure, closing the original studio along with it. Although Skylanders has been retired, both studios that worked on it are still going strong. Nobody lost their jobs, there were no layoffs, and that, in my opinion, is what we should be looking at. Instead of focusing on the sad, let's remember that real people worked on these games. There was real passion put into these games, and that is what we should be taking away from this. Skylanders was a really cool franchise, and that is where I rest my case. Yeah, that was a cringy way to end the video. No, I'm not making a video about the cartoon.